And we were a good active force for pushing things in the public interest in our respective states. And many of the people I met there became my good friends. Walter Mondale became vice senator from, he was a young attorney general of Minnesota. He became, as you know, vice president and senator from Minnesota. Young Hubert Humphrey Jr. served with me. He ran for governor of Minnesota a couple times. There's the gentleman from Missouri, to Ralston Purina. Fortunately, I can't think of his name right now. But many of them became United States senators, many attorney generals. And to this day, I have friends in the Senate and the Congress that were former attorney generals.
You've been in
Bill Clinton is a former attorney general.
That's right, of Arkansas. You've been in politics and public life for most of your adult life, all of your adult life, really. What would you say to a young person coming along about that kind of life?
Well, I was taught, as you were, that public service is a high calling, and that in a free society or a democracy where people are freely elected and have all these rights, that to be a public service and do something for mankind and to do something for your fellow man is probably the most purposeful and useful life that a person could lead. If you can leave a mark saying that he or she did this or did that for his or her fellow man. Now you can do it in private life, but most of it's done in public life. If you can do that, it's a great satisfaction. And I was always motivated by that. And if I was ever, for example, if I won a case in court, the tobacco case, I had that tobacco case. When I started that tobacco case, nobody had ever collected against tobacco companies for what we felt was a threat to the health of millions of Americans. And I started that case along with 13 other attorney generals, and we finally got all of the attorney generals of the United States. First time we ever got a successful judgment against them, the largest settlement ever made in America, billions of dollars. We've actually saved lives, and we've got programs going to people to stop smoking. And so actually, hundreds of thousands of people in this country don't smoke that were smoking prior to that victory. Well, where else can you do something like that and make a mark and do something? So I say to young people, yeah, don't be troubled by the lack of civility and the constant bickering that you see in public life today. There's still a room for leaders. I'm impressed with this young new senator from Illinois. What's his name? He's got an African name, born in Africa, but just got elected senator in Illinois. He speaks with a sense of mediation and diplomacy, and I think he'll be a great leader. No, I think that, and you can testify, we can all testify. Those of us who had good careers in public life can all testify that they wouldn't have changed that experience for anything, and that it's been a rewarding experience and personally gratifying. I would recommend that to each person, you don't have to spend all your life, but spend part of your life engaged in public service, doing something for your community and your fellow man.
Frank, you've met many, many interesting people during your tenure as Attorney General. Tell us something about them and some of the most interesting experiences.
Well, maybe it's because of my background of being Irish American and so on, and coming from a family that believed in public service. But the most impressive person that I ever met and related to was John F. Kennedy. And I had occasion to spend quite a bit of time with him because in 1962, in that election, where I was just appointed Attorney General and I had a run, and my governor had a run against George Romney. And George Romney was a couple of points ahead in the polls. And Swainson's people and John himself wanted the newly elected president, John F. Kennedy, to come in and help him campaign a week or so before the election. And I was told by people later in Kennedy's office that they said, Swainson's not going to win in all probabilities behind the polls. We recommend that you don't go down there, Mr. President. We better spend our time elsewhere where we have better chance for victory. And John F. Kennedy said to his people, the person who told me, he said, look, John Swainson lost both his legs in World War II. He's a veteran, he's in trouble, and I'm going to help him. And he said, the heck with the advice, and he came to town, and he spent the whole day, got here about 8 o'clock in the morning. And so they picked me to campaign with the governor for most of the day, first of all, because I was looking fairly good in the polls, and I was Irish American, and I related to that. They'd have others come in for a couple hours, but I was with them for the whole day, and I got to visit with him, and that was the last time that he was in Michigan alive. And there's a plaque on the old Sheraton Cadillac Hotel downtown that says that President Kennedy visited here in October of 1962, whatever it was his last time he ever visited the state of Michigan. Well, during that day, we were up in the Sheraton Hotel. During the campaign, because of John Swainson's legs, we had to pause midday so he could rest and take a nap. And we were in the presidential suite at the Sheraton, and John Swainson, the governor, and President Kennedy, myself, 2 Secret Servicemen. That's all that was in the suite. And they would let the governor sleep for a half hour, and they had a big buffet table. And I sat there and talked to President Kennedy for about a half hour, and it was very impressive.
We had a very interesting meeting with his brother, Robert Kennedy, when Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General. Tell about the
that was kind of interesting because
circumstances.
You and I think I was Attorney General for about 6 weeks, and here I'm new. So I'm going to go down and get advice from Bobby Kennedy, who had been Attorney General of the United States for 6 months. And he had less experience as a lawyer than I had. He'd only been out of law school a couple of years. At least I'd been a lawyer 9 or 10 years. But we did go down there, and we went into this cavernous office. This room was fairly big, but the Attorney General's office in the United States, for some reason or other, it's as big as a tennis court, the office, with 16-foot ceilings. And Bobby Kennedy was not a big man, but he had a desk about 12 feet wide, and there he's sitting behind this desk in a white shirt. And we walked in there, and it looked like, it just everything was overblown, And you and I sat with him and talked for about a half hour. And I remember one of the things he told me, he said, you should use your office as a bully pulpit. He said, you should be an activist Attorney General. I said, I intend to be an activist Attorney General. He said, you should be an activist Attorney General. I said, okay, General, I'll be an activist Attorney General. But that's when we met with him.
Remember what he had on the walls of his office, the drawings of his children?
He had the kindergarten drawings of all his kids. Yeah, that's the first time I ever went into a high official's office, and it looked like my wife's kitchen. It had you have in the icebox all of the kindergarten paintings and stuff of his various children. And you could tell he was a strong family man.
And what he told his secretary as we were leaving, do you remember that? He said, get my mother on the phone.
Oh, yes, yeah. And he had that Boston accent. He said, get my mother on the phone. And then he talked to Rose. He wanted to talk to his mother. Yeah.
How did you relax during all these years, Frank?
Well, I learned early on how I was thrown into a campaign pretty much after I started. I remember I still have a vision of being asleep in a motel someplace in western Michigan, 4:30 in the morning, and John Swainson came across the floor on his knees because both of his legs were off and he didn't have his artificial legs on, and he came across, crippled as he was, on his stumps. He came across the room on his stumps and shook me and woke me up and said, come on, Irishman, we got to get to the plant gates in a half hour. And then I saw him amble off on his stumps and walk out of the room. And I really, I never lost my respect for that man. I had respect before, but I have even more respect after that. And I thought to myself, my God, you got to be tough to be in this business. You got to be in shape. And as you know, I enrolled at the YMCA over here. And my father died too young from my standpoint. My father died of a heart attack at 63, and I didn't want to do it. So I used to, as you know, go over the Y about 5 times a week and swim and work out. And that began in 1962, and I've been doing it ever since. As a matter of fact, when I leave here, I'll probably swim today. I've been doing it for 40 years, and that's why I think hopefully in a few weeks, I'll have a 80th birthday.
Aren't you a big movie fan, too?
Well, both of us are movie buffs because we like literary things, and we like the theater. I know you do. You like the theater, legitimate theater, and you like classical music. But I've always